Thank you for joining CMB Regional Centers webinar. Our event will begin shortly. We're excited you could all be here today. We'll be allowing just another moment or two for our attendees who are just joining us to settle in. Thanks again. Hello to all of our attendees. I am Andrew Radosevich, Global Market Specialist for CMB Regional Centers. I'm happy to be your host for today's event. On behalf of CMB Regional Centers, a warm welcome to all of you that were able to join us, and it's truly our pleasure to have you here today. We're delighted to present another event in our Coming to America series, What Immigrants Need to Know About the Healthcare System in America. We hope you find tremendous value in our discussion and presentations today. The information shared today is for educational purposes and it's not meant to be taken as legal or directed advice. So today, we have some distinguished guests to lead our conversations. First, Ms. Diane Stewart, President of Pathway USA. Diane is an expert in international relocation, as it's the focus of Pathway USA as well. She and her husband, Bruce, have been able to assist over 1,500 families to successfully transition their lives to another country, and they have been doing so since 2006. Today, Diane will be discussing preparing for your new life in America, arriving to the United States, living in America, settling in the US, and how to be happy in your new chosen home. Next, we have Ms. Sharon Luker. Sharon has 30 years of experience working with clients to find the best solutions for their healthcare needs. She is an expert in long-term care, insurance, and Medicare. Notably, she has been quoted in the Dallas Morning News, Investment News, and NerdWallet. Sharon has served on the board of directors like the Financial Planning Association and received the Chairman's Award for her contribution to the local FPA chapter in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. Sharon will be covering our topic of focus today, what immigrants need to know about healthcare in America. She will be discussing certain costs with healthcare and paying for healthcare in America, healthcare insurance, medications, Medicare and Medicaid, and where to look for getting assistance. We're thrilled that she could join us today to share her extensive knowledge with you all. And finally, Mr. Kai Boyle, Vice President with CMB Regional Centers. Mr. Boyle has over 25 years of economic development experience. And Kai hit a milestone in October of this year, completing a decade of service with CMB. It's safe to say that he's one of our most traveled and valued members in our organization. Kai will begin our discussion today, and we'll be speaking briefly about CMB Regional Centers, who we are, and our current offerings. He's also going to discuss the timeline for an EB-5 investment. Following Sharon Luker's presentation, we'll look forward to an interactive Q&A session. Some of you have already sent in questions ahead of our event today, and thank you for those. So if those questions apply to our topics today, we'll start with those questions first. However, we still encourage you to please ask questions in the Q&A buttons located in the controls for today's webinar. If your questions are related to very individually specific matters, we request you please reach out via the contact information provided during the event today, and we'll be happy to try and assist with those questions, even if they're not able to be covered during our event. And just as another note today, we'll be leaving your audio muted for the entirety of today's event. So without further ado, Mr. Kai Boyle.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, everyone. A special welcome to our honored guests, Sharon Luker, who we're delighted to have here today as part of the panel. We oftentimes get questions about coming to the United States, and our Coming to America series of webinars has been very well received, and Sharon is the next step in that. Most people around the world are familiar with state healthcare plans, and the United States is a little bit different, and Sharon's going to share that with us today. So we're delighted to have Sharon as part of our webinar series today, and then certainly a very warm welcome to Diane Stewart, Miss Diane Stewart, who has this vast warehouse of knowledge on what you should think about and what she can do and what you shouldn't have to think about when you land here, to already plan your arrival to the United States before you get here, and how to make that a very smooth landing. So thank you to our panelists. Welcome, ladies. Thanks for being here today, and thank you for sharing your time.
It's wonderful to be here, Kai. Thank you so much, and a warm welcome to Sharon. Sharon is she's in Plano, Texas. I'm coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're delighted to be here.
Thank you very much. And so the process that we're going to go through, as Andrew said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the EB-5 program. And while this isn't the focus of our webinar today, I do think it's important simply because most of you already know what the EB-5 program, but oftentimes family members are invited, or friends or business colleagues are invited to these webinars, which is perfectly fine. But they're investigating the EB-5 program. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes and go through what is the EB-5 program, some of the components to think about. And if there are some more in-depth questions, as Andrew said, please be sure to reach out to us. We'll get all your questions answered. This is a taster and an introduction. We'll call it EB-5 101, if you will, an introduction to the EB-5 program. And simply, the EB-5 program is a program that allows foreign nationals to make an investment in the United States for the purposes of getting permanent residence card. And it was established in 1990. And in the 1990s, the idea was that an immigrant entrepreneur, which was the name of the program at the time, was the Immigrant Entrepreneur Program, the business person from a foreign land would make an investment of $1 million or $500,000 if depending upon where the location of the business was to be. They'd start the new business and they'd hire 10 new employees. They'd sustain those jobs, and those jobs would be full-time jobs. They would be permanent jobs. They'd last at least 2 years length of time, and they would employ American workers. So really, at its core, the EB-5 program is a jobs creation program that has an immigration benefit. Originally, it was administered by what the legacy organization known as the INS, or the Immigration and Naturalization Service. Since September 11 came around and the Department of Homeland Security came about, now the new controlling agency for EB-5 is known as the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, or the USCIS. And we'll refer to that USCIS several times throughout the discussion today. And again, the idea is to bring foreign investment into the United States. Job creation is the primary goal, certainly the increased economic activity, all the benefits of that additional money flowing into the United States. And again, it provides a path for a green card and long-term option to become a citizen if the participants wish to do so here in the United States. Now, the minimum investment amount that I talked about when the plan was originally written was $1 million, with the exception that it allowed for a reduction of that investment amount if the investment took place in what's known as a targeted employment area. And a TEA, or targeted employment area, is such that it is a high employment community in the United States, or it's in a rural setting, it's in the countryside with a small population and not adjacent or attached to any larger metropolitan statistical area. So if it's a high unemployment or a rural area, it reduces the minimum investment amount by half. November of 2019, there was a regulatory change. The investment amount went from the original $1 million to $1.8 million, and the investment in a targeted employment area to a new number of 900,000. So now, today's world, the minimum investment amount for a targeted employment area based EB-5 investment is 900,000. But the requirement to create 10 new jobs for American workers, full-time, brand newly created and permanent jobs remains the same. That did not change. In the category, there are 10,000 visas available in the EB-5 category. And 10,000 visas means that every family member must have their own visa. It's not 10,000 applications. So in a single application, the number of visas could be such that mother would need her own visa, Papa would need his visa, and any of the children who are under the age of 21 and not married would all need their own independent visas. So in that example, a family of 4, approximately 2,500 applications can be approved and to use up all of the visas that are allocated in the EB-5 category every year. The EB-5 timeline and the stair steps go something like this. The filing of the initial qualifying application is known as the I-526 petition. The immigrant entrepreneur, the immigrant investor these days participates with, or in coordination with an immigration attorney, files their original application, and it includes the business plan for the business that they will invest in. And that's where CMB as a regional center comes in. We develop that business plan. We already have developed the target projects. All of that's written. We provide that to your attorney. And then your attorney will add to that the information that the individual investor will provide. And that's the background information, the CV, the source of funds information, and that type of thing. And all of those are bundled together and they're filed with the USCIS. The USCIS takes a range of time that I will throw out here, approximately 2 years. Now that varies. And if you go to the USCIS website, you can see a range of dates for those processing times for the I-526 petition. But generally 18 months to 2 years is the expected term these days. And once that I-526 petition has been processed and approved, then the USCIS hands that information to the National Visa Center. And the National Visa Center is part of the Department of State. And that once all of the National Visa Center documents are prepared, then it goes to the consulate, and there is an appointment set up to have an appointment to visit the consulate, a face-to-face appointment for the actual issuance of the visa. Then once that visa is issued, the participants enter the United States and they begin what's known as their conditional residency period. The conditional residency period is about 2 years, is exactly 2 years. However, 90 days before the conclusion of that 2-year conditional residency period, the participants must file the second petition, and that petition is known as the I-829 petition. That particular petition, it happens, is kind of a self-audit, if you will. It demonstrates to the USCIS that number one, that the jobs have been created. Number two, that the applicant has entered the United States and to live out their 2 years of conditional residency. And third, that the investment amount has been in the investment and been sustained through that 2 years of conditional residency period. If the answer to all of those questions are yes, then it qualifies the participant for the approval of the I-829 based upon those components. Once the I-829 petition has been processed and approved, then it removes any conditions on the green card, on the 2-year green card, and makes that green card permanent. And again, the option after 5 years, you can apply for citizenship with certain qualifications. But that's an option. Some do apply for citizenship and some do not. Depends upon many different factors, personal factors, but it is an option that's available. So now let's talk about moving from the EB-5 program to CMB. Who are we? And as a short introduction of CMB, we're a company that was authorized in the EB-5 program by the Immigration and Naturalization Service back in 1997. From that very meager beginning in 1997 to where we are today, we have 5,700 investor families that have trusted CMB with their EB-5 investment. The number of I-526 petition approvals and I-829 petition approvals are statistics that are almost unmatched by anyone in the EB-5 category that is a regional center doing business. And now we have more than 1,700 investors who have made the complete circle. And the complete circle is having an I-526 petition approved, an I-829 petition approved, have gone through the immigration and have actually seen a return of capital. Throughout our history, remember, the EB-5 program is a jobs creation program. By our tally, we have created more than 185,000 jobs CMB has for workers here in the United States. These are newly created American jobs that we've created throughout our time as a regional center. We've raised more than $3 billion of EB-5 capital, and we've subscribed to 74 different projects that have raised EB-5 capital that have allowed foreign nationals to come in to the United States through the EB-5 program. And we continue to maintain a 100% success rate at every stage of adjudication for our projects. Every time the USCIS evaluates a CMB project, it's been approved 100% of the time. Our team are staffed around the world. We have more than 50 staff members, including those that are scattered throughout the world. We speak some 15 different languages, and we have investors from 102 different countries from around the globe. And the important thing that CMB has been founded on is on the success of the investor and the investor families. So when we take a step back and we look at what's important to those investors and those investors' families, we know that the primary goal for every EB-5 investor and their family is, number one, to get a permanent residence card, a permanent green card. The second goal is to protect their investment so that at some point in the future, they see a return of that investment capital to them at the conclusion of their immigration pursuit. And third is, if they can get it, and this is a far distant third, is to try and earn a little return or a small rate of return on that investment if they can get it. But the savvy EB-5 investor will never chase after a higher rate of return if it means a greater amount of risk on obtaining their green card or puts more risk on the return of their investment. So the return on investment is a far distant goal for the EB-5 investor. CMB understands what the primary goals are of green card and getting their money back. And all of our projects have been structured with those two key components in mind for the EB-5 investors. Now, the world has been hit with COVID, and it has not missed anyone and any business style, any business type around the globe. And EB-5 investments are no different. Remember, the EB-5 investment program started in the 1990s. So some of those projects that have come and gone have been successful. And in fact, CMB has had quite a few successful projects, and all of our investors who have been in our projects have been successful. There is one key, however, that some projects and project types have been particularly hard hit by the EB-5, or actually by COVID, that are in the EB-5 program. Those are office and multi-purpose developments, something that would have retail or a lot of office space. Hospitality, those hotels and those hospitality focused on those projects. And the luxury condominiums have also been hit negatively by the COVID-19. So when you're looking for an EB5 investment, it's important to take a look at what kind of project that the regional center or the offerer or the offering is asking that you invest in. Take a look, can it be prevented from being impacted by COVID or the next pandemic? It's important to understand what those projects are and how that regional center will protect you from what is unknown, those unknowns. Now, CMB, we've had a lot of projects, and we've had projects in hospitality, and some of those projects we've been continuing to work with. The job creation so that the green cards for investors have never been in jeopardy. But again, they've been hit financially hard by the process or the COVID-19 situation. So we've gone through a process of beginning the discussions of workouts with these particular organizations. But it's important to note that CMB's been around long enough that we saw the storm clouds on the horizon. We started to reach out well before the impact of COVID was felt in these hospitality industry type businesses. We were already working with our partners in these businesses. Remember, the job creation was well in hand. We were talking about their financial pro formas and those types of things to make sure that they would be able to substantiate and weather the COVID storm. So if you're looking for an EB5 investment today, if you're looking to do EB5 in the future, look for a regional center that'll continue to protect you and understands what the storm clouds mean and has the ability to take the steps necessary to protect you in those times where operation is critical and where those times where there's income stability is absolutely necessary for those partner businesses. So now let's look at CMB's current offering, and the current offering is CMB Group 75. And this is a terrific project that's located in Detroit. And our team here will be able to tell you that long ago, Detroit was the home of the car business and the automobile industry in the United States. And the reason that that's important is that Detroit went through this process of being the center of car manufacturing. And then as the car manufacturing shifted to other locations and foreign imports became an important part of the US economy, Detroit started to fall off a little bit. In fact, it became very difficult for businesses and families, and a lot of people moved out of Detroit to follow the jobs that went elsewhere. Well, this is a process, and during the past 10 years, Detroit has started to rebuild itself. And now CMB is partnering with Hillwood Development Company in the Detroit region to develop a logistics facility in that region for the purposes of a tenant who will be a Fortune 500 top 5 e-commerce retailer who has recently signed a long-term lease with the developer. So we know that this particular development will construct a build-to-suit warehouse and distribution facility for a top 5 e-commerce retailer. And there's a lease that's already been signed, a long-term lease on this particular property. Excuse me. Hillwood Development Company is an organization that was founded by the Ross Perot family. Actually, it's a vision of Ross Perot Jr. The Ross Perot Sr., for those of you who are familiar, was at one time a presidential candidate. He started his business as a top IBM salesman and then went on to found Electronic Data Systems, talking about this new paradigm of software, actually these computer softwares that have told the machines what to do. And he founded Perot Systems in 1998, which sold to Dell in 2009. And again, he ran for president in 1992 and 1996. Now, while he was not elected president of the United States, he did change the face of American politics. And that was Ross Perot Sr. And Ross Perot Jr. is the chairman of Hillwood Development. And they have more than 30 years development experience in logistics and in warehousing. And they have experience in 59 industrial markets here in the United States. 27 US states and 6 countries is the Hillwood footprint. And they're a huge company, a global footprint, a multi-billion-dollar company that we have partnered with for 31 different CMB partnerships, providing funding for industrial, institutional, multi-use residential properties, and with Hillwood Development Company. They're a long-term partner, and it's been a very successful relationship with Hillwood over the years. The project in Detroit qualifies for the $900,000 minimum investment for EB5. It's now located in a targeted employment area, very near the Detroit airport. So it's got a terrific location for an e-commerce retailer that needs that type of logistics facility for their processes. It uses CMB's job creation methodology, which is using indirect and induced jobs as a result of capital expenditures. So very careful, cautious, and a conservative job creation methodology for our investors. Again, CMB continues to be investor focused and very conservative, and we're trusted by many, many families from around the world. And we continue to have a 100% success rate for our projects and a project approval by the USCIS. And the partnership with Hillwood goes back many years and has been continued, as you can see on the center of the screen, and been successful each time. So if you're looking for do an EB5 investment that has somewhat COVID proof in this expanding need for industrial logistics and e-commerce in the world that we're living in today, we've got a terrific project that you should take a look at. So get hold of us. Here's the way to reach out to CMB. You can either scan that QR code on your screen or reach us by the website or give us a call. We'd be glad to talk to you in depth and discuss the projects, discuss our history, discuss the EB5 program, and discuss how we can help you or family achieve your goals for the EB5 program. So thank you for your time there. And now I'd like to spend a little bit of time with Miss Diane Stewart, certainly a talented and a very knowledgeable person who will talk about steps to success and living in America and her expertise on bringing more than 1,500 families, Diane, to the United States.
Thank you so much, Kai, and it's such a pleasure to be here. As Kai said earlier, I started Pathway USA back in 2006, specifically to assist clients and friends and family to have a successful relocation to the United States. And it certainly turned out that way. And my family and I came here with all the similar things that new immigrants come to the United States expecting. Wonderful quality of life, safe and secure communities, incredible education for their children, and of course, great healthcare providers and wonderful doctors. Which Sharon will tell us a lot about in a moment. But as he said, I've moved many families here, and it all grew out of a need for assistance, a need for good, sound advice. This can be a daunting move. It can be a difficult one if you don't know what you don't know. That is one of my favorite lines, is that so many people think that they know how to navigate a new life in the United States, but many unfortunately don't, because things are very different here. We do things very differently and we function in a very different way. And so out of my own personal experience, which was very difficult, I started out 20 years ago trusting the wrong people, taking the wrong advice. And it literally took me almost 20 years to finally become a citizen of this great nation. The good part of our story is that I brought 2 young children here who have now gone on to be very successful adults. I have a son who is a mechanical engineer who started his own tech company about 18 months ago and is now he invented a gaming device, and he's now shipping it all over the world at much success, lots of stress, but he has joined the American dream, which we're very proud about. And my daughter Sarah is a mortgage loan officer, also being very successful. We have a very buoyant housing market here in the United States right now. We don't have enough inventory, and people are wanting to refinance at incredibly low rates. So my story is really a story of success, despite making all the mistakes. And I just wish that I had known about CMB all those years ago, because it would have made my life so much more simple and so much less stressful. So I am honored to be partnered with CMB, because they are one of the very few companies that deliver a superb service. So let's move on to our presentation. How do you prepare for your new life in America? And people often ask us this. They wonder, how can I prepare before I even get there? And of course, the most important thing is to find out how you're going to get into the United States. And of course, that is where CMB comes in. And that is where they deliver an extraordinary product, an extraordinary service, and a wonderful program to get families into the United States in the best and easiest possible way. So if you're fortunate enough to be able to afford the investment in an EB-5 program, I urge you to do that, because it really does take all the aggravation and all the uncertainty off the table. The next most important thing is going to be where you decide to live. The United States is a very big country. We have 50 large states, and each one of them is very different, has a very different culture, has very different weather, has a very different cost of living. And so there are many different aspects that you need to take into consideration when deciding where to live. It could be that you go where there's a lot of family or friends that you have in the United States, but it could be more important reasons like, what is your lifestyle? What kind of business will you be doing? Are you going to be seeking a job? And where would that job take you? Because in the United States, we have centers where certain industries are more prevalent. So that is a very important process that I hold my clients' hands and take them through it so that they can really decide to live in a place that they're going to be happy in and that is going to deliver all their things on their checklist to make a successful life here in the United States. Very important piece that you can do before you get here is to open a bank account. Unfortunately, many people think that if they have sufficient funds and they can buy anything for cash, they can just show up here in the United States and they can resume their life. Well, unfortunately, it's not that simple. The United States is controlled financially by a credit score. So every single person that is operating, living, has a bank account, has a financial history in the United States, has a credit score. And so the very first step in creating and establishing that credit score is opening a bank account. Now, in the past, you could not open a bank account in the United States unless you had been physically here in the country and you presented yourself at a bank and they could open a bank account with you. And very often you would have to have a social security number, but there were instances that immigrants that I worked with over the years could open a bank account with the view of actually relocating here in a short period of time later. Unfortunately, with COVID, that became very difficult. People could not travel to the United States, and so opening a bank account was a problem. And we here at Pathway spent a lot of time seeking out a bank, a reputable bank that we would be prepared to open a bank account for our clients and they could start transferring funds into that bank account. And the importance of that bank account is very critical to establishing this very important credit score. And I cannot emphasize enough how important a credit score is. A credit score is basically what controls all of your financial transactions for the rest of your time in the United States, which could be the rest of your life. So without that really good credit score, things get very difficult and very expensive. And because interest rates are so low in the United States, and especially over the last couple of months, it is very important that you do not spend your money on paying cash for anything. So purchasing big ticket items like a house or a car, we don't recommend that you ever spend cash doing that. You keep your cash to grow your funds rather than give it away to somebody which is not going to benefit you at all. So opening that bank account is the very first step in the process. The next most important step that we encourage our clients to do is to purchase a property before they get here. And by purchasing that property, you immediately are able to apply for what's called a foreign national investment loan, which is a mortgage that you can qualify for as a foreign national, as an investor. And we have a way of guiding you and assisting you in that purchase. Once you've purchased that property, you can then rent it out to a United States tenant, and they will pay the costs related to that property. And because property is so scarce right now, rentals are higher than what the mortgage would be on the same property. So that's critical because you don't have to particularly worry about covering the cost of that property while you sit outside the country. And many of our clients have been extraordinarily successful with actually doing this, because either they move into that property when they finally arrive in the United States after waiting the period of 18 months to 2 years for their green card, or they keep the property as an investment and just keep renting it out and reaping the benefits of that property investment, which I must say have been extraordinary over the last 18 months. Many of my clients who have done this have seen very nice increases in these investments over the last 18 months. So we urge you to do that, and we are able to assist you every step of the way in order to achieve those very important milestones in building your credit. And the extraordinary thing about doing that is because once you have that mortgage, as soon as you arrive in the United States with your green card, you immediately get a Social Security card. And once you get your Social Security card, you take it down to the bank and it retroactively gives you a credit score, because they can then see that you've had a mortgage for the last 18 months or 2 years, and suddenly they see that you're a good payer and that you have managed your finances well. So there you have, you're now set up, you've arrived here, and you have the building blocks in place to have a successful life here. And the most important thing I tell my clients is to get a driver's license as soon as possible. And I can prepare you for your driver's license in any state. Most things are available online, and I will take you through the way the test is conducted, and you can practice and you can study before you get here. So many people think, oh, I've been driving for 20 years and I'm not going to have a problem getting a license. Well, if you don't know how the adjudicator is going to test you and what questions they're going to ask you, this can be a disappointment. And some people who don't get this guidance have failed their test the first time and have to go back and redo it. So very important that you get a driver's license, because that becomes essentially your identity document with your Social Security number in the United States. And so people will request your driver's license when you purchase a car, when you get insurance, which you have to have before you can purchase a car. So the driver's license is very important in establishing yourself when you arrive in the United States. Then the next most important thing is to get your Social Security number as soon as possible. Sometimes the consulate in your home country will trigger a request for a Social Security number to be issued when you get to the United States. But I always advise my clients to go down to your local Social Security office and just check that that number is in process and that it will be mailed to your physical address as soon as they issue it. Next, the most important thing once you arrive in America is to develop your personal and your professional network. And there are wonderful opportunities here in the United States to become engaged and involved. And it could be through your children's school. It could be through business organizations, networking groups. In America, we do a lot of networking. We volunteer at certain places in order to meet people when we first arrive. And it's very important that you build a professional and a personal network. So I assist my clients in doing just that and helping them and guiding them as to what organizations will be good for their particular profession and how it can benefit them personally as well. So once you have arrived here, you have to live here and you have to have some sort of income. Unless you are lucky enough to be retired and you won't need to work, many immigrants come here and they need to establish an income. Either they get a job, and so we can assist with that as well. Even before you get here, we can help you Americanize your resume. We can help you, we can introduce you to headhunters who would work with you and guide you as to how to apply for a job here. And there again, certain companies will check your credit score before you even get offered a job. So the possibility of getting offered a job before you actually get here is not great. It's very important that you're here so that people can meet you and have a face-to-face, even if it is on Zoom. But very important that you establish how you're going to earn money when you get here. And of course, the credit score comes into play. So if an employer at a bank, for example, wants to employ you, they're going to check on your credit score to see how you manage your own personal finances. or you may want to be establishing a new business. And some of my clients work with business brokers, which is the way to go. With my guidance, they then start looking for a business that they can invest in so that they can continue operating and having an income or creating an income when they arrive here. And very important that you interact with Americans. We have some wonderful holidays here in the United States. We celebrate Thanksgiving every year, which has just passed in November, which is always in the last Thursday of November. And we have wonderful celebrations throughout the year of various things like July 4th. My children always love July 4th because we gather as families, obviously pre-COVID, but we still gather for fireworks, hot dogs, and fellowship with our fellow Americans. And so very important that you interact with life and you plug in to the American way of life. Can we have the next slide? Wonderful. And so how are you going to be happy in your new life? How can you really engage in this wonderful living the American dream that we all enjoy? You need to establish a circle of American friends. Americans are some of the friendliest and nicest people on the planet. They're incredibly generous. And whenever you have a question, please reach out and just ask for help, and people will come running, literally. And so I encourage you to establish a really warm circle of American friends, invite them over for barbecues, and they will probably invite you back. Ask for help, as I said. If you have anything, if you're uncertain about anything, always good to ask for help. And I have my clients over many years still calling me up and asking me for guidance and help when they have a problem or an issue or something that they want to achieve. And then volunteering is big in the United States. Many cities have extraordinary organizations that you can volunteer at. So whatever your interest is, whether it's animals, whether it's building houses, whether it's construction, building houses for Habitat for Humanity, many of my clients do that. And there's so many other social engagement opportunities that you can plug into to be part of your community. And immigrants are really successful when they become part of the community. If you stay at home and you don't interact, life can get very tough. And so I encourage my clients to really plug in and become part of their community in their city where they live. So many other things that we do to assist our clients. We help you get started to get into the United States. We help you when you arrive here. We even help you moving. We help you move your household to the United States. And in fact, that's going to be the subject of our next webinar in January. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to be presenting about how to pack up a household, what to bring, what to leave behind, how to bring your pets, how to bring your valuable things, all sorts of interesting information I will be dealing with in that webinar. And really just explaining the visa process to my clients and helping them and what to expect along the way. I work very closely with immigration attorneys who are my client's source for all the immigration questions, but we help them and hold their hands to give them the security that they know what is going to be happening next. And also we have a very broad database of who we recommend here. Don't just trust anybody, ask for referrals, and don't trust anybody until you've had those referrals. So I'd be very happy to help any of you relocate to the United States. Please go to our website at pathwayusa.co.za, and I'd love to hear from you. You can call me on WhatsApp on my telephone number, 704-777-4842, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much, Kai. Over to you.
Thank you, Diane. You actually had them unwrap a holiday gift there by telling them what our next webinar will be. And so that gives them a little glimpse that we're continuing to do these Coming to America series webinars where those topics of interest that are presented to us or that people need to know about. So thank you very much for sharing that. And the other thing I continue to learn every time that we share this, you always bring up something new, and it's important for immigrants to know. And that was how to Americanize their CV or their resume. And that was an interesting thought that maybe some who are coming to the United States haven't thought about. And you've got that expertise and you brought that up. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, that's very important if they want to seek employment here. And we've had great success in referring them to industry-specific headhunters who really help them meet, get in front of the right people, because many of the immigrants that come here are highly skilled and able to bring their skills here to benefit the country.
Terrific. Well, thank you again, and certainly appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
Now we're going to turn to our keynote speaker, if you will, or certainly the central theme of our event today is what immigrants need to know about the healthcare system in America. And our guest is Sharon Luker of LTC Planning Consultants. She owns the firm. And as Andrew had pointed out, she's incredibly talented, has been in this industry for a long time, and will be continuing to share information with you about the immigration, about the healthcare system and how immigrants, what you need to know and how to go about accessing that. And so now, Sharon, I'm going to hand it to you and to bring us up to speed on the information that you have. Thank you again for being here today.
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's been very interesting listening to the prior speakers, and I totally agree with everything they say, including the networking in the US. They even have little, Diane, so just that you know, something called www.nextdoor.com is a place that I see a lot of people hop on and interact and make friends and get information. That's just my little tidbit here. Okay, so let's talk about healthcare in America. This is a little bit about me. I am an insurance agent. I do sell health insurance. I'm also a financial planner, and primarily my clients come from dealing with the professionals in the US, the accountants, the attorneys, people like CNBC. So in the US, we have basically kind of three types of healthcare system. You have the public system. The Veterans Administration is one that is the public. We don't have too many in the US, but they have their own hospitals. They have their own doctors. Unless you are a veteran, you cannot go to those facilities. Most of the systems in the US are private plans owned by either corporations, nonprofit organizations, individuals, but they are private, having nothing to do with the government. And then the biggest thing is a hybrid, a combination of a public and private plan. We'll get into that in a few minutes. So one thing you need to know is that America has a hybrid health system, a combination of the public and the private. One great thing about America is we have really good facilities and doctors, state-of-the-art facilities and doctors. The research here is beyond anything, some of the top in the world for medical research. Unfortunately, those things come with a price. It can be very expensive, so you do have to know how to maneuver the system. And even more importantly, it can be complex. And this is where you need your professionals to help guide you. And one key thing in the US is the healthcare is usually driven by the states. There are 50 states in the US, and every state can have a different type of healthcare system. So when you're coming over here, really concentrate on what is offered in the state that you move into.
Sharon, there must be an electronic glitch here. We're not seeing your slides.
Oh, you're kidding. Okay. Oh, that's bad. Okay, let me go back. I thought I shared my screen.
It may be something electronic.
It looks like I am sharing my screen. Let's see here. Can you see it now?
Not yet, no.
Not yet. Is Andrew on? Andrew, is it showing that I'm sharing my screen?
No, it's not. Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm clicking on that button. Let me try this again. How about now?
There we go. It's a little
Yeah.
better.
Okay. I guess I had to click on it multiple times. Okay, are we there?
You're good.
There
Oh,
we go. Yeah, I wasn't.
oh, sorry about that. Yes, you should have hopped in and let me know. Okay, well, let's kind of go back here. Well, here we got, you should be seeing the picture of me. And
Lovely.
thank you. So I'll start a little bit again. So now I'm going to be getting into the healthcare systems. And as we talked about, we have the public plans, the private plans, and the hybrid, the combination of the public and private. And this is the slide I think I was on when we discovered our error here. But the US has a hybrid system. This is where we have a lot of great doctors, a lot of great facilities, great research. It can be complex. And the last thing that I really want to know is most of the healthcare is state driven. So when you move to a state, you want to explore what is going on in that state. One thing that the US does not have is universal health coverage. There are, like Canada, there are several countries that have universal health coverage. So if you are coming from a country that is used to that, this will be completely different. It does not have universal health coverage. The only public system, like I talked about prior, is the Veterans Administration system. And they do have their own doctors, they do have their own hospitals, but it's only available to people that are in the military or have been in the military. The government does pay for the hospitals, the government does pay for the doctors. But for your purposes, this is just more of an informational slide because you will probably not have access to this unless sometime you go into the military or your children go into the military. So the private healthcare system in America has, it's got the hospitals. And like I had said before, they're mostly owned by the private sector, the corporations. A lot of doctors do own facilities. Those are the individuals. Nonprofit organizations can own the facilities. The thing is, the prices do vary considerably. So if you go to one hospital and have the same procedure done, and then go to another hospital and have that same procedure done, the pricing will be different. And what is now happening with healthcare in the US is people are starting to shop. They're starting to take control of their healthcare cost. And if they need, let's say they need an MRI, they may call the hospital, they may call the local facility, the standalone facility, and price shop and go to the cheapest price. And we're seeing that more and more. Like I had said before, the healthcare options do vary by state. So you are allowed to go to any state to get your healthcare. And that does happen in Texas here. I'm in Texas. MD Anderson down in Houston is one of the best cancer places to go to. A lot of people travel from all over the world, in fact, to go to MD Anderson, and they will take you in. So how do you pay for healthcare? Well, the first thing you can do, what we call self-pay, or you can pay cash. Everyone will take cash. If you are in that situation and you don't have insurance and you are paying cash, you want to basically tell the doctor, let's say that you're paying cash. And I know in my particular area, if I say I'm a cash pay, they'll give you a 30% discount on the price. Always know if you have to go into a facility, a hospital, that you do not have insurance and they charge you full price. The prices are very expensive, and you can negotiate that down. Don't accept any pricing for anything if you are actually paying cash. But for the most part, everyone's got insurance to help pay for the cost. And there are different ways to get insurance in the US. One of the most popular and the biggest part is if your employer, if where you work, offers insurance. We call that group insurance. And that is insurance that they offer to all their employees. And usually they get it for a discount, or the employer will help pay for it. And it's good insurance. And so if you are coming over here and you are working for a company, that's the first thing you do is ask about the group health insurance. There are some stipulations sometimes where when you first start working for a company, they may make you wait like 90 days or 30 days before you get insurance. So you do need to check that out. Another thing is, if you come over to the US and you form your own business, you can set up your own group health insurance for yourself and your employees. And that is highly recommended. There are laws in effect for that, and each state has their own different laws. So you may be required to pay some of the premium for your employees, but that's where you bring a professional in to kind of guide you on how to do that and how you want to do that. The other way to get insurance is just to buy it yourself. We call that self-pay. You pay the monthly premium. And we're going to get into a little bit later on the different types of options that you have. So if you do not have access to group insurance, self-pay or buying your own is going to be the way you need to go. There are other government-assisted programs in the US, such as Medicare. Medicaid is really designed by the state for those that are indigent, that are lower income, lower assets, so will not be on your radar as something to look at. And then a few years ago, President Obama came in and instituted the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, which brought in a marketplace system that everyone can basically hop into for health insurance. So like I said before, you can go anywhere you want to go, but not all health insurance will pay for that. And we'll talk about that. I know in some countries, especially those with universal health care, sometimes it takes 6 months to get an appointment. But here in the US, you can get an appointment when the doctor's available. Could be same day, could be next day. When you start dealing with specialists, doctors that have a specialty, it may take a couple weeks to get an appointment, but it is not months. You can basically get an appointment with someone any day. Your healthcare is going to be received in, like most countries, doctor's offices. There are a lot more non-hospital facilities that are emerging that have specialties. For instance, if you need a surgery, like recently I had a colonoscopy. I did not go to the hospital for that. I did go to what we call an outpatient or a surgical center that just does the colonoscopies. It's specialized in that. A lot of times if you need blood drawn for labs, you go to the lab, you go there. So a lot of times it's done in the doctor's office, but we're seeing more and more, you go directly to the lab. We talked about different cancer centers like MD Anderson in Houston is, all they do is specialize in cancer. So you see a lot of doctors and a lot of facilities with certain specialties. And, a lot of the healthcare is going that way. You really don't go into the hospital unless something major has happened. So let's talk about a little bit about the insurance and how that works. Well, one, it can be very complicated. Once again, this is where I strongly urge you to work with a professional on this, because all the policies differ. You basically pay a monthly premium to get that insurance, or your employer pays for it. Then you have something called a deductible that you have to pay before the insurance kicks in. You have co-insurance, and a lot of the policies will have what we call max out-of-pocket limits. That will be the max you have to pay out of pocket. There are a lot of little separate costs. So working with a health insurance agent helps you navigate and understand those costs. It is not, one thing I want to stress is, once you buy the insurance, it's not like it pays for everything. You do have additional cost with that. The group health insurance that we talked about before, they do have the broadest networks of doctors and hospitals. And let's talk a little bit about networks. A network with health insurance is a group of facilities, hospitals, facilities, doctors that belong to this certain network, and it usually is stipulated by the insurance company. The insurance company has worked price negotiations with these people to be in their network. You can have something that's called an HMO plan, and that's very network driven. And if you take one step out of that network, if you go to a doctor that is not part of that HMO network or plan, then you're going to pay cash. Insurance will not cover it. And the deal on the networks is every insurance company has their own network. Every doctor doesn't belong to every network. They have their own certain networks that they belong to. So it gets very complicated trying to figure out, but there are ways, working with an agent, there are ways that that can be done. The other type of plan you can have is what we call a PPO style of plan, which does also have a network, but it will pay for you if you go outside of the network. But it will pay, you'll have to pay more of a higher deductible co-insurance. It will cost you more, but it at least will pay for some of that. The key takeaway on this is that not all doctors and not all hospitals take insurance plans. More and more in the United States, some of the doctors are just going out, what we call it, offering a concierge plan where you just pay the doctor direct. They don't take insurance, and dealing with the doctors, they will give you a discount in price. So things are definitely in flux and definitely changing with the healthcare system in the US. So we talked about this a little bit. Every state has their own healthcare type system for the most part. When I say that, healthcare system, they have different insurance companies. For instance, a big insurance company is called Blue Cross Blue Shield. Well, their insurance policy in the state of Texas is different than in the state of Illinois. So just because you have Blue Cross Blue Shield doesn't mean that it's the same policy in each state. And even the federal program like Medicare can even get down to counties. A county is different regions in a state that they can have differences. There are some federal and state programs to help you pay for your health care. On medications here, this is probably one of the biggest surprise to people coming to the US on how expensive medications are. They can have the same medication in the country that they're coming from and come over here, and it may cost them 2, 3, 4 times that amount, that same dollar amount, the same cost. So it is a hard system to maneuver, but sometimes people choose their insurance plans on the medications that they cover. And by the way, every insurance plan doesn't cover all medications. They have their own formularies, which is a list of medications they do cover, and they are not all consistent. You can have one insurance company cover one medication and another insurance company not. So if you have lots of medications that are expensive, you really want to concentrate on that in choosing your insurance company. Okay, now sometimes because of the expense of the medications, you will find that drug companies will offer discounts on their drugs, especially if it's a brand new drug and very expensive. Many times though, they've got income limitations. So if you make more than X amount of income, they won't help you pay. But that is something that you can go to help pay for some of the expenses, especially if your insurance company doesn't cover it. Let's talk a little bit about the government programs out there. One of the biggest in the US is Medicare. It is a federal program, but it's only offered to those people that are age 65 or older, or if they are on a state program of disability. So if you're under 65, you are not eligible for it. It is run by the federal government. The federal government does have rules on it. There's different aspects to Medicare, but when you're in the US and when you turn 65, almost everyone goes on Medicare. If they're on a group program and they're still working, they may stay on their group program, but Medicare is much cheaper than buying a individual or a group health insurance. So that is key. Medicaid, that's something we talked about a little bit before. That's in every state. And for people that have limited income and resources, that is a way for them to get their health care. But it's probably not something that you will want to consider. The other big thing is this ACA, the Affordable Care Act program. It's interesting. It is operated and managed by the federal government. However, they contract with insurance companies in each of the different states to offer the insurance. So you can sign on to the program, but your healthcare, your insurance that you will have will be in your state. So once again, the policy that's offered in one state, in say Texas, is not the policy that's offered in say Kentucky. So once again, we're looking at state driven. Now, some of the plans, the states, I should say, did not adopt the federal program of the ACA. They have now have their own state-run programs. They do have to follow some of the rules of the ACA, but it is not governed by the federal government. California is a big one. They have their own healthcare system, their own place that they can go and you can buy insurance. And again, they contract with different carriers in the state. And not all carriers are on the ACA program or the state health plans. So you can also buy insurance outside of this. So you have to kind of check it out in the state that you're in. So let's get back. We talked about Medicare. Once again, for over age 65, you can get on Medicare if you're over here. You do not have to be a US citizen, but you do have to be a lawful permanent resident. And there are various ways that you can do that. But the caveat is that you have to have lived in the US for 5 continuous years. And this is not going back and forth to the country. I see that sometimes when people that live here have parents that go back and forth to the country. To get on Medicare, you have to be a lawfully permanent resident, and you have to intend to stay here, intend to have a permanent home. Now, Medicare in the US, it has 2 parts, Part A and B. Most Part A is free to people if they have worked in the US for X amount of time. If they have not, or you find yourself in that situation after 5 years, haven't met that requirement, it does cost $458 a month. And then you have a Part B charge too, which is really dependent on your income. And then you also buy, in addition to that, a Part D drug plan that helps pay for your drugs. If you do find yourself over the years qualifying for Medicaid, do know there are income and asset limitations. And several states do have a 5-year waiting period before you can even get on Medicaid. But if you are here legally, children and pregnant women can sometimes hop on it early. But like Diane will tell you, that is not something that you really want to get involved with. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the cost. So as I said before, the insurance can be expensive and it really varies all over the place. If you are part of the ACA, if you buy insurance through the marketplace, the ACA program, you can be eligible for a tax credit depending on your income. Now, you're not eligible for that tax credit unless you've been in the US for at least 5 years. But a lot of people are eligible. The income limitations can be higher for people. You don't have to be indigent. But alone healthcare insurance can be expensive. And really, your price depends on the plans you pick. The bigger plan, the one with the higher deductible, the higher amount of money that you pay on your own, the cheaper the plan's going to be. The insurance companies do greatly vary in their prices. So you do want to shop insurance companies. Of course, the older you are, the more expensive it's going to get. And the more people you put on the plan. If it's just yourself, or if you add your spouse, or if you add your family. It is interesting to note that a lot of the insurance plans, once you are a family, husband, wife, 2 kids, anything after that is not an additional cost. It's one price for the family. Government assistance, we talked a little bit about that before, whether you're on Medicare or Medicaid, or whether you get the tax credit. And one thing to note, the prices do really vary depending where you live. So that is basically my presentation. I am a financial planner and I do work, basically I get my clients working with the other professionals in the US. I can help with individual health insurance. One thing I didn't talk about is short-term health insurance. Short-term health is something that's designed for if you need health insurance for just a small period of time. So let's say that you came over here and you are going to be working for a company, but the company says, we're not going to offer you health insurance for 90 days. Well, what are you going to do for that 90 days? So you can buy a short-term health insurance policy to cover you for that 90 days. I help a lot of people with Medicare. I also help set up small group plans. And we're not going to really get into it, but I do have a specialty in long-term care insurance. One thing, just a caveat on that, long-term care insurance are for when you have to need help with, we call it custodial help, like with bathing or eating, or if you have to go into facility like assisted living facility or a nursing home facility. Unfortunately, the US does not pay for that, and those costs are extremely expensive if you go into a nursing home facility. Unless you do qualify for Medicaid, then they will pay for it. But most people, a lot of people buy long-term care insurance to cover that. Okay, Kai, I think I am through. So let me go and stop the sharing. Okay. You got it, Kai? Kai?
Guy, you're still muted.
I'm muted. I just.
There we go.
Yep.
And back to, have you got my screen?
You're not shared yet. Sharon, you also muted again, just so you know.
Okay.
Well, as Kai's getting his PowerPoint up and running again, we're going to move into the Q&A portion for today's event. We do have a couple of questions that have come in during the event today, in addition to, like I said, the ones previous that came in ahead of the event. Obviously, there's some contact information up today for our panelists who have joined us. Diane and Sharon, thank you very much for your presentations. Diane, always a pleasure and informative, and sharing the information you shared today has been exceptionally valuable. So thank you very much for that. To the participants today, we are going to continue to leave your microphones muted, but please use the Q&A control in the bottom of the control panel for the Zoom controls here. And we're going to move into the Q&A portion just in the interest of time. So Sharon, there was a question that had just come in, and it actually ties into some other questions that we've received ahead of the event today. It states basically, can insurance get rid of you if you happen to develop a long-term disease or something that would require long-term care?
No. Once they cannot accept you possibly, but once you have that insurance, they cannot get rid of you as long as you pay the bill, as long as you pay that premium.
So then maybe you might want to touch on pre-existing conditions.
Well, yes, that's a good question. So there are various types of insurance in the US, and some do qualify you medically. Like that short-term policy I was just talking about. They will look at your medical history, and if you have a certain medical history, they will not take you. If you have a certain medical history, but they will take you, they may not cover that particular anything related to that medical event on their policy. Now, plans such as the ACA, and this is why it was really developed, the federal marketplace plan, there are no pre-existing. They do not ask medical questions. Medicare is the same way when you first turn 65. As you get older on Medicare, let's say you don't hop on Medicare immediately, and there's certain little rules on that. It can be, you can always get on Medicare. It's buying the Medicare supplement that goes with it. So if you do have a pre-existing, you let your agent know that, and then they will guide you to policies that will help you.
Will that have an impact on policy cost?
No. No. I mean, if you get past the underwriting, the medical questions you're in, you're paying the same cost as everyone else.
Great. Thank you very much. Here's another good question. Obviously, we deal with a lot of international clients. What happens if I return to my home country to visit? Is my health insurance good outside of the United States?
Well, no. I'm going to say no. It is basically designed for the US. However, there are companies out there that offer what we call international plans. I use that a lot for US going abroad because they have US citizens have the same situation, that they can buy kind of a shorter term plan just for out of the country. And it also works both ways. Coming in, you can buy a plan. But in essence, I'm going to say no.
Thank you very much. So this is a question for Kai. If a project has an exemplar, does that mean that my I-526 is more likely to be accepted?
That's not a simple yes or no question. I'm not understanding. I'm going to assume that the word accepted means approved. There are many projects that have received exemplar approval where a single I-526 petition has never been approved. And the reason behind that is that an exemplar provides deference, provides the applicants that follow the exemplar with the thought that if underlying information in that document that's presented with the exemplar does not change, then the USCIS says that the information or the investors who file the same information have already been acknowledged as having that information having been approved. Then they could focus upon the source of funds. They could focus upon other aspects of that application and not the business plan, which is part of what the exemplar is. So the exemplar, however, takes a couple of years to process. So what is an exemplar approval is information that was previously filed maybe a couple of years ago. And the business plan could very well have changed, especially during a COVID situation where the impact across the world has impacted financial markets, impacted businesses, et cetera. And so therefore, the business plan may very well have changed. an investor who is filing the information, if any of that information that is filed today for the target project has changed substantially from what was filed in the exemplar, then the information that was approved in the exemplar is actually negated. So therefore, that it's not really a simple question, yes or no. If an exemplar is approved and the investor is filing the same information as was contained in the exemplar, then the USCIS will only look at the individual investor information and not the business plan that provided deference. However, there's a couple things to think about, and those are what we mentioned: the time, the business proposition. And now CMB, we file exemplars on our projects as well. However, our projects are happening in real time, meaning that we don't wait for an exemplar approval before we go out into the market and raise capital. We know we've done more than 70 projects. We know how to put together an approvable project. Every one of our projects has been approved by the USCIS. As a result, we understand what it takes to develop a business plan that's approvable by the USCIS. And there's no lag in time between when we file for investors, we develop the business plan, and that business plan, if it's filed as an exemplar, and the actual project occurring at the same time. It's happening in real time. And remember, the benefit behind that is investors who are filing with CMB, the project is happening now. The jobs are being created. The jobs that they need to be created are happening in real time. And therefore they get benefit of that. And they also get the benefit of understanding that CMB, all of our projects, again, that have been adjudicated by the USCIS have been approved 100% of the time. We know exactly what we're doing, and they get the benefit of a strong, solid regional center, projects that are approvable, job creation that's happening real time, and again, the greatest likelihood of success for the EB-5 investors.
Thank you very much. I know it's not a simple question, but it is an important one. So another question here. This will be for Sharon. Do I need to sign up for medical insurance before I get to the U.S.? And how can I make sure I'm covered immediately when arriving?
I mean, that is a good question, because when you sign up for insurance, they are going to want to see that you have a U.S. address. Okay, maybe Diane can help me on this a little bit, but you need to have a U.S. address. So unless you do, and you meet certain requirements to be in the U.S., to me, it's something the minute you get here, that should be on your radar. For instance, if you decided you want to get on the ACA plans, you only have 60 days from arriving into the country, 60 days from an address change. So I don't believe you can sign up early.
Sharon, there are instances where some of our clients have done that, and that's where that all-important bank account and property ownership comes into play.
Okay.
They will have an address, the property is owned by them, and they are able to plan it and time it in such a way that they can use that address, have a bank account that will pay that premium, and they can do it a couple of weeks before they physically arrive.
Thank you, Diane. Good to know.
So that is possible. Not everybody does that. They do it immediately. They contact somebody like you immediately. They get here and you can sign them up, virtually immediately. So there's not too much of a delay. I also advise my clients to take out a travel medical insurance to bridge them from their home country into the United States for a couple of months. And so that is a good way of bridging that timing. There are travel insurance policies that they can get in their home country for visiting the United States for X period of time.
And Diane, on that note, that is kind of what I was alluding to before. You can actually buy a policy from the United States for someone coming from a different country to here as like you said, a travel policy, kind of a shorter term type policy.
Correct.
The other thing that you can do is the short-term plans I talked about. If you qualify medically, you can buy one of those immediately. I can buy it today and have it effect tomorrow. Unfortunately, like the ACA plans, if I buy it today, it doesn't go in effect to the first of the month of the following month. So you do want to watch your timing. Different insurance companies' policies start at different times.
Yes, timing is incredibly important in a relocation of somebody from a foreign country. Very important, and we manage that timing in all the aspects as to what to do when. Very important. Thank you.
Perfect.
That's great information all around. Thank you very much. Let's see here. We have another one that says, after my spouse and children are covered under my insurance, if I have an employer who offers these benefits, it says, and what am I self-insuring? So I guess maybe if it sounds like they're asking.
I think I understand the question. Let me
Okay.
jump in real quick.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So if you are on your own insurance, you've bought it yourself, and now your employer offers it, you drop your individual insurance and you jump on the group health insurance. Okay. Now, caveat to that is some employers will only offer employee only insurance just for the employee, not their family. So just because you have a family, you may not all be on the same insurance policy. Like in a situation like that, the working employee may go on, but then you're going to have to buy an individual policy for the rest of the family. And you can buy, by the way, there are child only policies that you can buy just for children. And one other thing I want to quick say is, I didn't talk about it, is if you have college age students, people coming over here going to college, which happens all the time. The colleges most colleges offer their own plans, and they're actually very good plans, and they're relatively cheap compared to other plans. So for people in college, kids in college over in the US, definitely look at the college plans first.
Excellent advice, Sharon. Excellent. My children use those policies.
Mine do too.
Before the ACA came in and extended it to 26. Is that 26 still in place? Can your children at age 26
Yes.
and under
Yes.
still stay?
So if you are on an ACA plan, children can remain on it until age 26, as long as you take them as a dependent, quote unquote, dependent on your tax return. And there are certain rules for that. And for the college plans, you do have to be a full-time student. And that is defined differently by the different colleges. Sometimes it's 9 hours, sometimes it's 12 hours. So I think a takeaway on this is your family can have different circumstances that you may want to have different plans for different people in your family.
Thank you. Kai, there's another question that just came in. It says, if I've got this correctly, we have to count approximately 2 years for your file to be accepted. And from there, we'll obtain a temporary green card, valid for 2 years. Then we'll automatically obtain a permanent green card. And then the follow-up question is, can we lose our permanent green card?
So the follow-up question is, again?
So the follow-up question was, can we lose our permanent green card? So
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and yes, you can. Remember, you have to be, it's a residence card. So should you stay outside of the United States and disconnect from the United States for more than a year at a time, or you abandon your desire to live in the United States and merely return to the land of your birth, or whether your family's at, or whatever your conditions are, you certainly can lose the permanent green card. There are some responsibilities that come along with that, and that is to not stay out of the United States for extended periods of time without the knowledge of the USCIS or the State Department knowing about it. If that is to happen, and occasionally it does, sometimes families who have permanent residence cards need to go home to take care of business needs. Maybe they've got a family member who's sick. They have to tend to some other things. Real life happens. then certainly work with an immigration attorney to file the appropriate documentation so that when you do return or when that time comes, it's not a surprise at the border when they're saying, well, how come you stayed outside the United States for so long? Didn't you really abandon your green card? And all of that is advised and taken care of on the front end. And all of the appropriate documentation has been filed so that it helps to minimize any risk that they'll consider that you've abandoned the green card. But yes, in answer to the question, it can be lost. The residency requirements are still in place and not staying outside of the United States without the State Department, the USCIS, knowing that you're going to be outside of for an extended period of time.
I just want to add something there, Kai, that yes, you need to be communicating with your immigration attorney very closely if you do plan to be out of the country for any point of time, because that can impact on your application to become a citizen down the road. The other thing I want to mention is that you can risk losing your permanent green card if you or anybody in your family commits a serious crime. And so that is a very important thing to bear in mind. You are still a guest in this country as a permanent resident, and you have to behave accordingly. So, you know, serious crimes are a no-no if you're a permanent green card holder.
Excellent, thank you for that.
And I think an important note is, you know, once the permanent green card has been issued, after a period of time, they have the ability to apply for citizenship as well.
Kai, there's a new question here that's just popped in, which follows on well from the previous question. Is what about if the investment program goes bankrupt once we have a permanent green card? Would you like to speak to that?
Yes. Remember the fact that the project went bankrupt after the permanent green card had been issued is really a moot point. The requirements for the green card is the investment, the sustainment of the investment to the point that the conditional green card period has been met, and that's the 2 years of conditional residency. When that I-829, that second application, a second petition is filed with the USCIS, that it demonstrates that the requirements for that permanent green card have already been met or are soon to be met. And by that, I mean the job creation requirement of 10 jobs, the sustainment of the investment has already been met, or the jobs will be created within a reasonable time period thereafter. When they adjudicate the I-829 and they remove the conditions on the green card and they make the green card permanent, what happens to the business side of things is completely out of the immigration timeline. Actually, the return of capital to the investor can come when they qualify for the return of capital, and that's the point at which they've completed their 2 years of conditional residency period, and the borrower has returned the capital to the partnership. So long before the return of the I-829 is approved and the permanent green card is issued, that's when the investor could actually be out of the investment. So what happens thereafter is really, it doesn't have any impact, is where I'm going, on their immigration pursuits.
Thank you for that, Kai. If medications, so Sharon, if medications are cheaper outside of the United States, can I buy them from a different country?
You can. And because of the price differential, we'll see people, especially in states like California and Texas that border Mexico, for instance, they'll drive over the border to get the same medication there. The only caveat I have on buying them international, which people do, is you need to know your pharmacy. There are a lot of people out there selling drugs that are not really the drugs that you think they are. So you have to be dealing with a reputable pharmacy. But yes, you can do that. And one other thing, I want to go back to a prior question on insurance outside of the US. There are sometimes insurance policies will pay for emergency care, but they want you to get back to the US as soon as possible. But I tell people just to count on that it doesn't cover it. And if you're going outside, buy the travel insurance and not get messed up with that.
Yeah, very important. And just for the record, when I first got here, and I had a son who was a severe asthmatic, and the inhalers were very expensive here in the United States, something that President Trump, in fact, addressed recently about lowering the cost of those inhalers. I brought a number of inhalers every time I came back to the United States, and I never had an issue bringing them in. As long as they are packaged and have the prescription with them, there is no problem with bringing in, proper medications for a particular family member or use.
And Diane, that is a good point. I mean, President Trump most likely will be on the way out, but one of his big agenda items was to lower drug costs. There is a big push in the US to lower the drug cost because they are outrageous. So I'm hoping to see in the future, for instance, here's an example of it. For people that are on Medicare, President Trump came out with legislation a little bit ago saying that for 2021, if you need insulin for diabetes, if you're insulin dependent, that the insurance companies, if they partake in the program, can only charge you $35. So I think we are seeing there is such a push. And a lot of people are on medications here in the US. So there's a big push to lower the cost.
Yeah, I mean, just an example of my son's inhaler, it was $5 in South Africa as opposed to $75 in the United States.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah.
It looks like we've got time for just a couple more questions here. Could you discuss public charge and coming to the U.S.? If you become dependent on society, what does that mean for healthcare or U.S. benefits?
Let me start with this, and I think Diane, you may have, because you work so very closely with the families who are coming in. Public charge was a regulation that was put forth and now has met with judicial injunction, so it hasn't been enacted yet or hasn't been enforced. But the idea was that those who are coming to the United States to live here and reside in the United States, we don't want them to be a burden on the system in the United States, and that includes healthcare. So the idea that public charge would be a consideration are for those families that come here. Some of the aspects that they think about or that were proposed that they should think about when they're going through their interview at the consulate is their income substantial enough to prevent them from being on the public dole? What about their ability to work? If you're someone that's young and have the ability to work, then likelihood is you'll be able to work and you wouldn't necessarily become reliant on the social handouts. What's your English? Can you speak English? Can you speak the language that it takes to work here in the United States? Do you have a substantial income? Again, those are some of the things. And believe it or not, and Diane, certainly a tip of the hat to you, credit score is one of those components that's on that checklist. They believe if you have a good credit score, then you're certainly able to navigate the U.S. system and wouldn't become reliant upon public handouts or become dependent on the system. So those are the types of things that are come under that public charge idea. Again, it hasn't been enforced. It has reached a judicial injunction, but insurance is part of that. And coming in and having to go on Medicaid or Medicare would be one of those components that might be considered as becoming a public charge and prevent someone from being able to enter the United States. Diane, what have you experienced?
Yeah, we're seeing this at many consulates around the world over the last couple of years, is that they are asking those questions. They are looking for people to be self-sufficient and not just coming here to get free handouts. And so we prepare our clients with the immigration attorney that they're working with to prepare those documents that they go with to the consulate when they have their interview, to absolutely ensure that even if it's not being enforced, as it were, but they go with a presentation that shows the consulate that they are quite capable of taking care of themselves in the United States and are not going to be reliant on things like, Medicaid and food stamps and that kind of thing. And so it's just a preventative, and we don't know how it's going to be implemented over the next couple of years and what the legislation will be, but we prepare our clients for every eventuality. And I think that's the sensible way to do it.
And again, we're neither Diane nor I are attorneys, so that's a good question for an immigration attorney, and to see whether or not make sure you get their counsel on that, and whether or not you'll fit into that. Certainly, most of the EB-5 investors that we deal with are high net worth individuals, and they don't run afoul of that particular thing. But if it's a concern for you, go back to your immigration attorney and make sure that you ask that question and get their counsel.
Yeah, I think even in spite of the fact that they may have people of high net worth, they still need to present themselves accordingly. And so absolutely speak with their immigration attorney, and he will guide them very clearly as to what kind of documentation they take with them. Very important.
One other thing I wanted to point out is probably about a year ago, President Trump had presented legislation requiring anyone entering the anyone entering the country must have insurance. Because what they did not want is people coming over here without insurance and then having the government having to pick up expenses. Now that was stopped and that did not go through, but I can see that happening in the future, that they may have to show proof of insurance before entering the country.
Thank you.
Yeah, that again would be, the attorneys would know about that. A reliable professional attorney, immigration attorney, would be up with all this legislation that's changing so fast right now, as I'm sure you are, Sharon, with all the legislation that's changing around healthcare. But again, as Kai said, reach out to your immigration attorney and get his advice on exactly that point.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think that is going to be our wrap up for today. Kai, do you have some closing remarks for us, and maybe go around one more time before we wrap up here?
Certainly I do, and I think what that last question did was point out the fact that this panel of experts, we have Diane, who works very closely with those families who are coming to the United States, and then Sharon, who is a service provider who understands the intricacies of what that healthcare, what insurance means, and how to guide her clients through that path. So what we've assembled here today is a group of folks who understand what it means to come to the United States and what it takes to navigate through the system, especially when it comes to healthcare. And that can be a little bit tricky. It can be a little bit confusing. And however, it doesn't need to be something that is overwhelming. We've got some help for you. We can guide you to the right help, and we can get you through the system safely, comfortably, and answer all of your questions along the way to demystify the healthcare system in the United States. So certainly our panelists today, thank you, Diane, thank you, Sharon. It is certainly a tip of the hat to you both, and sharing your experience and your knowledge with our guests today.
Kai, can I just make one final comment?
Certainly.
And this kind of plays on what Diane said. When you come here, and if you're looking for a professional, like a health insurance agent, for instance, as in any profession, there are good ones and there are bad ones. The key is to surround yourself with good professionals, because good professionals know other good professionals. And Diane made that comment in her slide. So don't just do an internet search and looking for people. Start asking the people that helped you get here and that you trust, or your neighbors that you trust, and just be very careful on that.
Excellent advice, Sharon. Thank you so much for that. That is our pathway mantra. We tell all of our clients to always ask for help, number one, and ask for reliable referrals. Ask people that you trust, as you said, to refer you to people that they trust, who have delivered good service, sound advice, and help them through an issue. And so, with that, we are here, all of us are here to help you, guide you, hold your hand, and prevent you from making the very common mistakes that we see so many folks making. It's a big learning curve with healthcare, and Sharon and people like Sharon are here to hold your hand, guide you, and point you in the right direction so that you have the right cover, the right insurance to protect you from life's unexpected surprises. So with that, thank you so much, Kai. It's been a delight to be with you today.
Thank you both. And those who are with us today, don't forget that next in January and in 2021, we will have another webinar. Diane spoken about it today. We'll watch your email. We'll be sending out invitations for that. And we would welcome you to join us. Certainly, thank you all for joining us today. Contact information for CMB is on the screen. You can contact us and we'll provide information on how to get hold of Diane and Sharon if you didn't get an opportunity already to write down their contact information. We'll send that your way. Thank you again for joining us. We look forward to next time. Bye now.